a combination of a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday. And then 2 more that came up this afternoon, fairly late in the afternoon, around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock this afternoon. So hopefully everybody has the handouts and have them accessible or printed out. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you could repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I'll take the roll call. Let's see. I am here. Brian Gephardt. Carla Ravoy.
Present.
Ashok Desai.
Here.
Jeff Bowen.
Yeah, it's Bowen, and I'm here.
Jeff Bowen, sorry. Kathy Lang.
Here.
Siv Mahante. Absent. Susan Howe.
Here.
Paul Whitman. No Paul. Okay. Vanita Verma.
Here.
Brian Kilgore said he might be a late. Connie Tung.
Here.
Kelly McMahon.
Here.
Eric Chu.
Eric may be joining us late as well.
Okay. Gerald Green.
Here.
Anita Young.
Anita is here.
I thought I saw Anita. Louis Zamora.
Luis is our district staff person who monitors our streaming. So
Okay, good.
he's not necessarily present, but he logs on and then is available to us.
Okay. And Marcus Battle is here. And Jing Yi Brown. Is Jing Yi still in the room? Okay, I saw her come in. Maybe she left. And Judith Wallace.
Here.
And then I got 2 more in the room. Brian and Eric are coming in. Brian and Eric. Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Eric who's joined us, Chip.
Yes, I saw that. Okay, Brian, I got you as attending, and Eric, also you. We just took attendance. We've done the Pledge of Allegiance and called the meeting to order. So, welcome and introductions. Marcus, welcome to our meeting. You and I and several of us had a good meeting the other day where we talked about the budget situation, and we'll be going over that in more detail today too. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Judith, you were on that phone call the other day, and welcome back. You've been with us before. And is Jing Yi still in the room, or did she leave?
Chip, that was my daughter's name I said. I changed it to my name.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. All right, I just wanted to make sure. All right, moving right along. The minutes from the last meeting, our September 2nd meeting. Oh, Carla?
Chip, could Marcus Battle just introduce his role, I guess, or his job title in terms
Great
of...
idea.
Sure. And I'm sure many of you I probably have not met, but yes, I'm Marcus Battle. I'm the Associate Superintendent for the school district. I actually oversee the facilities department, is one of the departments within my, and Kelly actually reports to me. So I have broad responsibilities for the bond program and facilities and so forth. So I had not attended one of these meetings up until now. So I had mentioned to Chip and the Kelly and the Kathy that I definitely want to be more involved in the work of the CBOC and making sure that you all are fully supported. And Judith has also committed to that. That's why she's here. So we definitely want to give this group more attention, more resources, and more support in fulfilling your duties. So
Very good. All right, great. And one more thing to note with Brian Kilgore not being in attendance right at the moment, maybe later, Anita Young is taking notes and minutes. Is that a fact, Anita?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the minutes from September 2nd. And if there's a motion to approve, we'll act on that. If there's some comments or changes, we can act on that too. Hearing no comments, is there a motion to approve? Don't be shy.
I'll move to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you.
And I'll second.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor of approving the minutes as written? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Ashok, was that an opposition or were just a late approval? Approval, okay. All right. Any oral and written communications that the CBOC needs to be aware of?
We have not received any public comments or questions at this time.
Okay, good. Okay. Moving right along. Okay, at the last meeting, this board, the CBOC, gave me the responsibility, along with Brian Gephardt and Jeff Bowen, to write a letter to the Fremont Unified School District and state our concerns about the financial changes that were made that we became aware of in the last meeting. So we did that. I sent that out to everybody. And it was also a part of the package that went out for today's meeting. And since then, we have received a written response from Kelly, and that letter went out to everybody. And then there was a meeting which Marcus, Judith, and Kelly, and Kathy Lang Newman, Brian Gephardt, and I attended via Zoom yesterday. Or Monday, excuse me, Monday. And the notes to that meeting are also attached. So I think with all the communications and the files that were attached to this meeting, everyone is up to date. And so I think there's going to be further discussion both in Kelly's report and also in the finance report by Connie, where we'll talk about what the current situation is and what's being done to manage the risks as well as the reserves and contingency. So, is there any questions about the letter or any of the follow-up that's recently taken place? Okay. Then let's move on to the
I
Yes.
have a small question.
Yes.
And I must say that I did not get a chance to read all the documents that were sent my way.
Okay.
And I don't, and I'm, as I said, I don't have a whole picture. Maybe you and Brian can give us a whole picture, complete picture that was discussed yesterday. Was there, in the last meeting, we had the big issue about contingency, that we
Yes.
don't have contingency money. Was there a contingency money that you found somewhere?
I think what we ought to do is let's look at the finance report, and then we'll fill in further information that we have from the meeting, from the Zoom meeting on Monday, as well as Kelly's written response. But I think it's safe to say that that the program team under Kelly feels there is contingency in the budgets. And in the finance report that we're going to see in just a few minutes, there has been roughly $3 million of contingency identified and set aside. And then there's a possibility of another $6 or $7 million of contingency, which I don't see in the finance report, but Kelly was talking about that during our Zoom meeting on Monday. So let's wait for the finance report and Kelly's report to get in more information about those three things.
Okay.
So, Chip, might I just dovetail off what you just said?
Yes.
Anita, I just wanted to also expand on what Chip was talking about. In our meeting on Monday, we had an opportunity to meet with your committee members and actually review the letter in detail and go over the responses that you guys have in front of you that were provided based on the letter that was initially sent to us. So today we're prepared, and I've attached, and Chip has attached to the documents that you guys are reviewing, the question of where did that $13.5 million go? So that is in a document that's attached that we will review. And then also looking at the overall program budget, we have an updated and revised report that originally was submitted to you in the last quarter. And so we've updated that, and that will reflect the numbers that we're going to share with you guys today. So yes and yes to your questions, and hopefully when we finish our discussion, your questions will be answered to your satisfaction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
Let's
Chip.
move ahead with Connie and support from Kelly on the finance report.
Chip, do you want us to share our screen, or are you going to share that document?
Oh, let me set it up so you can share.
Okay.
Who is going to share the screen?
Either I can or Connie can.
I can share.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Kelly's going to share.
Connie's going to share.
Or Connie is going to share, rather. Okay.
And Connie is going to be sharing the actual updated financial report that provides us a full overview of the bond.
I'm making Connie the host so that she can share more easily.
All right. Can everybody see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the overall financial report for the Measure E bond program as of October 5th. There's not much changed since the last report, except for the program contingency. Right now, the total available funding, we're still at $669 million. And if I scroll down to the next page, and right here it says program contingency. This is the a number for 3.2 million right now. And this is from anticipated from various completed projects for the project sweep. So this amount will be going into program contingency. And also, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to ask. So we should see the projects that are swept. We should see their numbers have gone down then.
Yes.
And understand, guys, that this will the project sweep that we talk about is going to go to board, and once it's board approved, then this document will of course change as well, because right now this is in it's not in draft mode, but it's not been fully approved and executed. So I just want you guys to make sure that you know that and make note of that we still do have to take this to board when those projects close out and get approval to then move those funds to the appropriate place that we're identifying them to go.
So why would we move them in the report before they've been approved then, I guess?
Well, in the meeting you all had requested, you wanted to identify where those would be located and have a sum total. And so we're just providing you with the information that you all had requested.
I guess maybe we could look at one example, because it just gets to like the transparency of the numbers, right? If these aren't the official board approved budgeted numbers.
So Connie, can you go ahead and continue with your report? I apologize for interrupting.
Oh, it's okay. That's the overall change since the last report, and also the expenditure has gone up since the last report. It was at 298 million last time, and right now we're at 300 million. So that's the overall changes in comparison to the last report. Do you have any questions?
Connie, can you actually show him kind of where some of the projects are, where the funds have been shifted on some of the projects that we have, are in the process of being closed out and have identified where those dollars would be?
Okay, sure. Here are the projects that are in the process of closing out. The Grimmer Mod, and there's the Brookville. Some projects have already been closed, and for example, Grimmer Mod is still in the process of being closed out. So these are the total amounts that were anticipated to, the amount will be anticipated to be going into the program contingency. All these dollars right here, if you add up all these numbers, it will equal 3.2.
So Connie, can you just, for the sake of us, since we are streaming this, can you read each project and give the dollar value?
Okay, Grimmer Mod, 300,000 for 128. Brookville, new classrooms, 300,031, 577. Mission San Jose pool, 323, 058. And then Patterson, it was new classrooms, $77. Mission Valley modernization project, 399, 270. Oliveira mod, 488, 475. And Washington new classrooms, 646, 139. And American new classrooms at 903,654.
Just a correction. I think I heard for Mission San Jose, you said 323, but it's 223.
399. Mission San Jose pool, 223.
Yeah. So I think you misspoke and you said.
Well, there's a Mission Valley also.
Right, there's a Mission Valley mod.
Yeah. No, I was particularly talking about that one, Mission San Jose.
So Kelly, have all these projects actually been closed out and they're done, and the final actuals are what they are? There's no more expenditures going to occur?
We are in the process of closing them out now. So for the sake of our accounting purposes, we've accounted for the outstanding pending invoices that we've received to date. But until we actually get our notice of completion and final invoicing done, this is our tentative budget of what we expect to have available. And we're about 98, 99% sure of these numbers. But as I said, until we finally close everything out, we just don't know.
Okay.
So I definitely wanted to follow up on my question comment. I do appreciate kind of the provisional information that you guys are sharing with us to understand, and that's why it kind of begged what is the process, and what what should this report represent, because it is definitely a report that we and the board rely on. And so if this report contains unapproved board information, that could confuse people as they're looking between different reports over different times. So that's why I was going down that path.
Well, as I said, the last report was submitted to the board, and that report has my signature, Connie's signature, and our director of finance's signature to show that it's been reviewed, vetted, and evaluated. This report will not have those signatures because it is in basically draft mode until the next quarter end, where we will do a final reconciliation and update these numbers for them to be presented to the board in the next quarter as the status of the bond. So that is why I said that, because I didn't want you to think that this is like the final of whatever we've prepared and submitted, since this has not gone back to the board yet. It's an update based on your request that we had in our conversation on Monday.
I think that makes sense. Yeah, there's a way to mark the reports as board recommended or board approved versus, provisional. That might,
If that is something that
wise.
you guys would like, we will go ahead and make that change.
In the past, you've given us, meaning the team has given us reports marked draft with the understanding that they were not board approved.
Okay.
So, we're accustomed to that. That's fine.
Okay.
We'd rather have draft information rather than no information. So we appreciate the report, but we also recognize what you're saying.
Sure.
And thanks for pulling this together. Though I do wonder how was almost $1 million, and I like having an extra million from American for
one of the things that we're also one of the things that we're also looking at right now before we close these projects out is to see if there is scope of work that has been incomplete or was not fully realized because there were budget restrictions based on the overall project. And so we're actually in the process of looking at where we can apply these funds at these particular schools. So that's why I say I don't want to say, yes, we're going to have these $3 million, because if I find that I can update some lights or provide some additional HVAC or provide some additional value to the site that these funds are assigned to, we're going to try and spend it there before we put it back in the pot. So, and of course, this is something that I do have to bring back, to the board for discussion, but I just wanted to let you guys know that we are looking at that. And it's not just, oh yeah, we haven't spent the money, and so we're just going to we'll throw it back in. It's no, we're going to look and see where can we really spend it and have it be impactful at that particular site as well.
That's in the context of the scope of the original project. It's like not adding additional scope to the project.
Correct.
Because I did hear the words design. What was it? Designed by budget, not designed by, this would be nice, this would be nice.
Right. No, what I'm talking about are things that, say we did our initial evaluation and we said, hey, we need all new HVACs at this particular campus, but our budget would only allow us to say do 20% of them. So now that we've finished the work that we anticipated doing, if there's still HVAC units that need to be replaced or, are on their last leg, well, we're going to go ahead and address it and try and accomplish it with the funds that are still left and available within the context of the overall project scope.
Thank you. That's reassuring, because I think our concern is that there's still a lot of things lower down on the list that are probably not going to be done. And there's still a lot of things that should be done. So
yeah.
That's an ongoing concern.
Yeah. Well, we're doing our best to try and address it. And so
I'm looking at the projects way down on the list, and there's such inequity in terms of, and this is an old complaint of mine, between the facilities around Fremont, from the things that are really, really old to things that are new. So, some schools look like they're just from someplace totally different. And they're getting some update, but they certainly don't look as nice as some of our newer schools, nor do they function as well as some of our newer schools.
Sure.
Okay. Kelly, can you also talk about how there's approximately 10% contingency in each of the budgets for design phase and another 10% in the budgets for construction phase?
Yes. So, Connie, do you have the? I'm going to use Thornton as a project
Before
example.
we move on, could I ask, what about Walters Junior High? I thought that there was also believed to be a little bit of money left over for that.
At this time, the funds that we were anticipating have being made available at Walters are currently being used to finish portions of the work that were in scope that were not done. So we don't have a firm number on Walters until we're actually finished, because we completed, I believe, the thresholds, and there was some fencing and there was some additional lighting that was completed over the summer. So we're in the process of doing that final reconciliation. So that's one reason why that one is not part of this list, because we don't have firm numbers to say, yes, we have this amount of money left and available to add to the pot.
Okay. And what's the status for Walters? Is it considered in final completion, or what is that considered?
So Walters is, I guess you could say it is in final completion. So we are in the process of, we filed the notice of completion and we're waiting for the county to, of course, send it back to us. We have submitted all of our DSA paperwork, and so we're just waiting for, the final approval. But it's at 99, 100% complete at this point.
Okay.
So please refresh my memory. Connie, do you have the Thornton project spreadsheet available?
Yes.
Okay. So your question was about contingencies and how those are identified. So in our conversation that we had with your committee members on Monday, we had a long discussion of how contingencies are handled and identified within projects. And so I was under the impression that the assumption of contingencies versus program versus project, there was an assumption that all the project contingency was gone. And my position was that, well, no, all the contingency is not gone. So the program level contingency is the contingency that supports the entire program. Project contingency is where each project has a certain amount of money that we have set aside within that budget to accommodate any unforeseen conditions and changes that occur throughout the life cycle of the project. So as we had shared before, we put basically a 10% design contingency in the overall budget of a project, as well as a 10% contingency for construction to accommodate those changes. So in essence, each project, give or take, a couple percentage points, has roughly about 20% of its overall construction budget that's set aside for those unforeseen conditions and unexpected changes. So if we look at Thornton Middle School, this is an actual budget report that we create, and it's called a cost to complete report. And it's also a, I don't know, kind of like a spot check for me. So I see these on a monthly basis. The Vanner team and I review this with Marcus, and we just kind of see where we are collectively with all the different areas that we have identified that the funds would be spent. So Connie, if you scroll up just a little bit more, so that we can see A through, I think it's A through E. Yeah. So as you guys can see, when you look at A, it says site. So that dollar value of $500,000, that is the budget that we've established to cover all things related to the site. So, and as you can see, there's an allocated amount and there's an available amount. So right now, as it stands, we have $500,000 available for land improvements for Thornton. Not to say that that's still available But because this report that comes to you guys on a quarterly basis, those spend downs are not reflected right now for you all to see what that real number would actually be. The next item is B, which is planning. And you have a bunch of different activities that actually occur under planning that have budgets identified. And as you guys can see, there's $8,433,337 that has been budgeted for those activities. The center column is what we have expended to date. So we've expended 1,903,121. Actually, Connie, what is that top? Yeah. So the budget increases based on August 24th. This identifies for you where all the budget increases occurred for Thornton to then give you what your total budget number would be for that particular section. So as you guys can see, planning originally was 8,433,000. And with the changes that were approved, it is now 10,336,466. And as you go down the spreadsheet, you can see construction is estimated. Our budget as of 8/23 was 50,688,000. We added 11,054,237 to the construction budget. For now, the construction budget has increased to 61,742,232. So when you look at where the overall 16.5 is going, you can see the bulk of it is going actually towards the construction of the project and not any of these other sort of secondary or support services that still are needed and required for execution of the contract. So the next section, if we look at other construction costs, which is under D, you can see all of the areas that are impacted by the requirements that we're required to do for the project are all reflecting what the 16.5 million is for. So as you guys can see, if we go to line H, it says project contingency. That says that is a project contingency that's listed under we call it FF&E, which is fixed furniture and equipment. That is the budget for the furniture and equipment. But if you look directly below H, and it says 6295 construction contingency total, you can see our budget for the project construction contingency is $5,644,912,000. So you're not going to see this $5 million necessarily when you look at that program line on the summary sheet of that budget report, because this number is embedded within the project total for that particular project. And so all of our projects that are in our program have this type of setup where you can actually go through and see where all of your costs are identified and where the contingency has been set aside. So that's why I was just alarmed when you guys said, oh, we don't have it in contingency. Well, no, all the projects have contingency. It's just they're not identified in the program contingency budget line. So, and as you can see,
Kelly, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, finish it, and then I'll talk later.
So as you can see in the middle, it's sum totals, the $16,470,838, which summarizes the 16.5 million that we took to the board for approval on August 24th.
So Kelly, the grand total for Thornton Middle School is 92.5 million, right?
Correct.
And you've got
we just round up to whole numbers, so it's not this is our exact. But
and the contingency is about 5.6 million, so that's about 6%, not 10%.
Well, there's also contingency in the design services that was not identified on this particular one, and those have actually been identified. If you go back up, honey, if you scroll back up.
Well, the design on Thornton is all done now, isn't it?
The design on Thornton is all done, but if you look at item 6226, other planning in total, there's some additional monies kind of embedded in there that are also part of that budget that we sort of, have created cushion for to address any other changes that come up. So there's roughly $6 million in this project available.
So is that,
Still not 10%.
can I ask a question? Can I ask, yeah, okay, is it not 10% because we've already dipped into the contingency for this project? Or because of some of the unforeseen circumstances?
Judith, do you want to answer that? Because I don't want to misspeak because I know that I understand it a certain way and I don't want to.
I have to admit, I don't have an exact answer to that. I can come back with one.
Okay.
The contingencies, I want to verify this. We're set up, and the contingency for design is set aside within some of these numbers, and I don't know which line item it is. So
Okay.
I'll go back and verify with Stan, who set up all the original budgets and established the contingencies for each one of the projects and identify how they show up in the line items.
Okay.
Okay.
It might also be helpful to know what the parameters are around establishing contingencies. If it's as simple as 10% contingency for design and 10% contingency for construction, obviously that's a simple answer, but if it's variable based on project complexity, size, or whatever, that would be good to be aware of too.
Brian, I'll get back to you on that because as I said before, unfortunately, I'm coming in kind of after the party started, so I'll be happy to find out how these budgets were developed and get back to you guys on where those numbers are kind of hidden and inside of these numbers that are rolled up into this report. But that is an industry standard and best practice that we go by. And there is variance according to projects. And also when we do an analysis of how much contingency we set aside, a lot of times it's based on the scope of work and the likelihood that there may be changes or impacts based on the complexity of the scope of work. So if there's a really super complex project, you actually might have a higher contingency than just 10, 15, or 20%. Or if it's something that's really simple, like a lighting retrofit, you might only set aside 3% because you have confidence in the number of devices and scope and performance of the contractor to know that you're going to come within your budget. So there are variances that are out there, but I'll come back and give you guys a firm answer on this.
And we have talked about contingency on this particular project. Is there a program contingency as such? This is just the project contingency, and I understand that you're saying that there is project contingency built into every project.
Mhm.
Is there a overall program contingency that in case there is some school which has something broken down that needs to be, or something that comes up that needs to be fixed or done or added?
Well, and that is what that $3.2 million was that we identified for you. That is the program contingency that can be put into the larger pot that can be drawn from for those particular instances that you're talking about.
And from your experience, do you think 3.2 is sufficient?
Vanita, that's a hard question to answer because it's not. Of course, it's not going to be sufficient based on $600 million. But we didn't start out with $3.2 million. We started out with a very large number that has now been reduced based on work that's been completed, as well as assignments of funds to other projects that have yet to be started. I'm not going to say that it's not going to be enough, but it's better than not having any. And as I had explained to the folks on Monday, one of the strategies that we are working with to implement and have implemented, I think, pretty well over the last couple of months is that, when we establish a budget, we're holding our design teams to design the budget. And so part of the problem that has happened in the past is that the scopes of work have not been clearly defined and they've been allowed to sort of expand after the projects have been awarded to contractors. And so we're putting a limit on that moving forward. And we're spending a lot more time in the planning process and the scope development process to really pinpoint what the project needs will be and identifying the accurate count of monies that we need to actually implement whatever program we decide on. And so I think in doing that, we're not going to have the need to have this huge pot of money that's available to cover unforeseen conditions, because we will have already really evaluated and identified what the work really does need to be and accounted for it accurately.
Kelly, can you explain on the on this page, what is the center column again? I thought I heard you explain it in two different ways.
Scroll up just a little bit, Connie. Yeah, it is the budget increase
Okay.
that was accounted for in the August 24th board approval. You
Okay.
guys specifically wanted to know how the 16.5 million was spread out over the project. And so
Right.
that center column lets you see where the increases are occurring, and then totals out at the bottom and shows you what now the total budget is for the project. You can
Okay,
see the
good.
transition from the 76 to the 92.
That's exactly what we asked for. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. All right. Well, I hope that that answered your question. Are there any other questions or clarifications that you guys had on this particular item? And as I said, I use this as an example because it's reflective of how all the projects are documented within the bond program.
Okay. Just so the rest of the board knows, the initial budget on Thornton was 61.8 million. So it grew to 76 million, and now it's grown to 92 million. And the actual cost incurred so far is 8.6 million. So there's a long ways to go.
Can I ask a question about one of the line items in the financial report,
Sure.
in the other report?
Connie, can you go ahead and switch? Yeah.
And if my understanding is correct, I think this will be helpful as well. So the line item is in the in progress, the second item there, in one in progress. So additional funding for Centerville Hopkins approved by the board. And I wanted to understand if that money has been designated for expenditures or not, or what. Actually, I should be even simpler. What does this line item mean?
I guess I'm not sure I understand your question, Brian.
Why is there a budget of $4.2 million for Centerville and Hopkins? Why not that be in the Centerville and Hopkins project? Like I said, I think I know the history behind this one, but I didn't want to.
Kelly, would you like me to answer that?
Please do.
Okay, I think, and I've forgotten the exact dates. I don't have them in my head right now, but sometime back when there was a couple of years ago, there was concern that when the Horner budget was increasing, there was concern that there wouldn't be enough funding for Centerville and Hopkins. So the board set aside some additional funding specifically for those upcoming projects that hadn't started very far yet. Some of that money has been drawn down, but 4.19 million of that has not been assigned to any project yet.
So in effect, it is
Committed.
a middle school specific program contingency.
Right.
And so, and it may, I don't know, this is probably worth more thought than we want to give here, but that might be worth putting in the program contingency section because it'll be, so in effect, we've got the 3.2 million from the sweep and another 4.2 million in a middle school specific program contingency.
The board can make those decisions. Right now, I think that on it's, clearly lined out, so it can't get spent without board approval. And right now, the board has only approved drawing that down for Centerville and Hopkins. But the 4.1, again, is the amount that has not been used. Now, the part it got drawn down partially in order to fund this most recent update because there wasn't enough in program contingency. So part of that has been used it went toward Thornton. But again, that was an approved transfer. So some of that money that was set aside for Centerville and Hopkins went toward Thornton.
So I'm not saying take the 4.2 billion and add it to the 3.2 billion. I'm saying there are two program contingencies, and just from a transparency standpoint, that just think about how best to communicate that. I mean, maybe ask the board: are they aware that there's a 4.2 million in a middle school program contingency? Right, because the board made this decision 2 years ago, and there's a lot of complexity. So anyway, I'm getting into too much of the weeds here, but I thought that was important that the committee at least be aware that there are really two contingencies.
So on the consolidated project cost report, that is set aside. There was actually, and this shows as in progress, but when you look at a different report, it actually is called out. And the reason that in the previous one it shows as a project in progress is in order to accurately track that funding. And the pot was set up. It was created as a project so it would accurately reflect the dollars and then the drawdowns of those. So, and Connie, I don't think we have a consolidated project cost report. We don't run those, but it's being shown as a project so that money can be followed. And it's not in the general program contingency.
Thank you for answering my question and hearing me out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Kelly, one more thing you mentioned on Monday is there is roughly $6 to $7 million more in contingency that is somewhere. So I'm wondering
Well, actually,
where the somewhere is now that we have the report.
So actually, after we had our conversation with you all, I did meet with Judith and the finance team. And so the monies that I was talking about is actually what she's referring to in the Centerville and Hopkins set aside. So that is the additional funds that I was referencing that's available. But as Judith said, those are specifically earmarked for Centerville and Hopkins. And it would take the board's approval to actually take those funds and allocate them to the overall program for them to be used elsewhere. So that was my error in speaking that, but I was accurate in the sense that they're contingencies, but I wasn't aware that they were fully allocated per board action for Centerville and Hopkins.
So who
Okay.
asks for the board approval?
Pardon me?
Who has to ask for the board approval to put it in the contingency fund?
Marcus, do you want to answer that?
Well, I guess once we're comfortable, just like the other projects, that those funds will not be needed for the middle school contingency, those projects are completed, then Kelly would, we would send something to the board to request that those funds be moved to the general program contingency are no longer needed. So I don't think I don't think we're at that point yet, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we're not.
Still working on Centerville and the other sites. So
those two are in their early stages of execution.
Right.
So I have a kind of a planning question in terms of maybe helping me understand the way that planning is thought through. So if we use Thornton as an example, if the budget for that project has gone from, I think Chip mentioned, like, what was it, 68 million to 76 million to now 92.5 million, what happens if there is additional need that is, say, 5 million, which is clearly more than any potential 3.2 million that we have in contingency? What happens then?
So myself and my team would meet with Marcus and we would evaluate what those costs are and see if they are costs that are programmatic versus physical plant kind of stuff. And then we would then evaluate to see what funds we have available. And if there were no more funds available, then we'd have to start looking at other projects that would either not be started or be stopped, and those funds reallocated to this particular need of Thornton that's under construction. And so that's a process that we would have to go through and have a discussion and evaluation before we took that to the board and asked for their approval to do that.
Or if there was an opportunity to reduce some of the scope, we would also look at that if we have an opportunity to do that.
Correct. So that's the process simplified, but it's definitely much more complicated and many more steps in between. But that would be the initial step, is to look at what is the scope of work, what's the cause for the cost increase, and is it a mandated requirement versus a I call them creature comforts of, hey, I really want this, but I can't really afford it right now. And then we make the decision of, is this going to stop us from opening the school and functioning as a functioning campus, or is it something that we can, offset, delay, and do at another time? And if the answer is no, then of course we go down one direction to say, hey, Associate Soup, where can I find money? And then he'll, do an evaluation and figure it out. And then we come to the board with options, and they make a decision as to what they're going to allow us to do.
And this is part of the reason why it's really important that we keep our bond program going as a district. I mean, we know that the monies we have right now are not enough to do everything that needs to be done. And we also, and I'm sure all of you all know about the escalation and the other pressures that we are experiencing in the market. So it is, all of those factors are going to put more pressure on this program to get everything that we need to get done within the budget. As we get down to the end of the project, we're getting ready to draw down our last of the funds in the next 3 to 4 months. So, as we go through these projects, I mean, the funding is going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, because when we had a large project contingency, it really wasn't an issue. We were able to do everything. If we needed to do more at a project, we did it. But now that we're coming down to the final phase, it is something that we're definitely aware of. But that's why I would also say that we have to make sure that we are ready to make decisions about future bonds, so that we can make sure that all the projects get completed and we get to do everything that we want to do. And no project or no school is impacted because of that.
Kelly, are you seeing that labor costs are actually going up, and also materials and construction materials and supplies are actually going up, and they're driving the budgets, or are they being?
We've actually seen, we've started to now see the impacts of June, July, and August in our billings and costs that we're tracking. And our material costs have gone up. Some of the things that we're feeling the pressures on are steel imports, rubber and petroleum products. Also, right now we have a run on concrete. There's high demand of concrete and CMU. So we are experiencing delays in delivery, even though our orders were, confirmed back in January, February, March. It's the law of supply and demand. Even though we're in line, the demand has just far exceeded the ability for these vendors to supply. So we're starting to feel those impacts of the delay in delivery of certain things. So yes, we are feeling it. In terms of labor, we're not seeing it as immediate, but we are anticipating it, and I know on two of our vendors have already sort of shared with us, hey, these are our costs we're, passing on to you due to COVID. But we do anticipate having additional costs. And all of our projects do have a certain amount of escalation already built in. So we're hoping that we stay within what our budget has been for that moving forward. But we'll definitely keep you guys abreast of any significant changes that we experience moving forward. Connie, you're welcome to go ahead. If there's no other questions on this report, I would let her go ahead and stop sharing her screen, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah, I think we better move on.
Okay.
We should move on to your project report.
Okay. So my project report, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. It says host disable participant screen sharing. Okay. So Connie, you have to release the screen share and give it back to Chip, or either give it to me.
That already did.
It's not. Okay.
See if I got it.
Okay.
Now Connie's still the host.
Okay. So Connie, what you have to do is you go hover over the leave, and you don't necessarily leave, but you can actually you can go to participants and go in line and then assign, give the host privileges back to Chip.
Sorry, where do I go?
Or the other thing you can do if you can't figure that out is go to screen share and click the button that says allow multiple people to screen share.
Okay, I just took it back.
Okay.
So I'm going to give it to you now.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly, you got it.
Alrighty. So here we go. Sorry about that. Let me expand this for everyone. I'm going to move these things out of the way and reduce you all. Oops. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
No.
No?
I can't.
No?
I can see it fine, but who said they could not see it? Okay, I think everybody can see it.
Okay. So here's our monthly updated report. So our current projects that are in design are Thornton Middle School. They are currently have the first two increments approved, and then our increment 4, increments 3 and 4 are currently being completed in DSA. Increment 3, we just received approval, I believe, on Friday, and the bid of that particular work will begin this month. And then DSA is review for increment 4 is currently still ongoing. Centerville Middle School conversion, they also are in design review, and they're 3 increments with the exception of increment 3. 3 is broken up into, I believe, 2 parts. And so part 1 has been approved, but part 2, which is the actual new structure and our additional hardscape area, has not been approved, but we are expecting approval for that work before the end of the year. Washington High School Theater.
On Centerville, are you expecting comments back from DSA like we got on Thornton and Cosgrove because of it?
We are actually not expecting that many because we had a very exhaustive pre-planning process with them. And we went through the full scope of work and got a lot of the questions that they may have during the design review answered prior to us submitting the actual construction documents. So a lot of the back and forth that we had with our previous projects, we took our lessons learned and actually incorporated some of the things into this one. So we're hoping that will expedite the review process and not have so much changes that come back that will impact us financially.
Okay.
And so that's part of also some of the things that we're talking about in terms of how we mitigate our risk and we control our costs is that planning and that pre-planning efforts. We've really sort of ramped up and tightened those down. The next project is the Washington High School Theater, and that project is currently out to bid. And bids were due on Monday, but we had a 2-week extension because there were several questions about some of the structural elements that we wanted to make sure that we answered those completely for the contractors so that we were able to ensure that our budget numbers were as accurate as possible when the bids were received. So those bids are due on, I believe, October 19th. So 2 weeks from Monday. Yes. October 19th, those bids are due. So we'll have a identified contractor and award sometime in November for that particular project. And the next one is Hopkins Middle School. So Hopkins is currently completing its design development and beginning its construction documentation. Now, a contractor for that project has been identified, and I believe their contract is going to the board for approval this particular board meeting. And that right now is on target to, meet all of our program needs as well as meet our construction schedule at this time.
So
Kennedy
on
High School,
Hopkins, all DSA approval is complete then?
Hopkins, we have one last approval that we are waiting for. And so we're expecting that sometime this month or definitely before the end of the year based on what we've been doing so far.
Okay.
And so once we'll know for sure by the end of December, early January, what that actually looks like. But all of our estimations so far have given us the indication that we're pretty much on target for the schedule that we've established and for the costs that have been identified so far to date.
Okay, good.
So the next one is Kennedy High School, and Kennedy High School is the next largest project that's going to be starting. And if you all recall, this was taken from Group 2 and moved up in terms of priority based on the board's decision, I believe it was in March of this year, to move it into the execution phase or launching phase. So we are in the process of completing design development with our design team, and we did have a preliminary DSA meeting, and so far we are doing very well. We're on target, and we have not received a significant amount of comments on this particular project at this time because as I said, we have been taking our lessons learned from the previous projects and started to incorporate some of those things that we had challenges with and addressing them in these new projects that we're submitting. So we're hoping that we will have our initial review back from DSA for the actual initial planning approval in December of this year.
Ellie, I have a question about this project.
Sure.
Because of the actual different items, whether it's lighting and parking lights and bathroom refresh, is this project something that could be done? Like you could potentially refresh the bathrooms without having to go through like DSA, or is it I'm just kind of curious about.
So unfortunately, when you go through modernization programs, so DSA is required anytime you do any modifications to the physical structure of the building that exceed, say, 40 to 50% of the overall, occupancy or value or square footage of the project, you're required to go to DSA. And so for us, because we are doing a significant amount of work that what they consider to be fire life safety upgrades, we're required to go to them. And even if, if it was a onesie bathroom here or a sink there, that's considered maintenance and operation. But because we're overhauling such a significant amount of work, we absolutely have to go, unfortunately. So, I mean, it's fortunate because they keep us safe, but unfortunate in that it's a process that we have to go through that will potentially impact us in, executing the work. But I hope that answered your question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Kelly?
Is there any others in our design?
Okay, I'm on construction.
So moving into construction, so American High School is 99% complete. We are in the process of completing all punch list items, and I believe the warranty manuals have been delivered and are being reviewed by M&O right now. And we are filing our notice of completion with the county and with DSA within the next 2 weeks. So knock on wood and cross our fingers, we will be at 100% complete at the end of November. The next school that's under construction is Hornet.
Kelly, I have a question about Kennedy.
Sure.
About American.
Sure. What's your question?
So the budget is 25.7 million. The actual expenditures to date, with 99%, of the work done, is 23.6 million. There's about a $2 million sweep that's available there that can go into contingency. When will that be swept in?
That will be done at the end of the year. When we have absolutely closed this project out, that is when those funds will be swept.
Okay.
Was that also part of that initial group that Connie had showed us earlier, in terms of needing board approval to sweep it into
Yes. So any funds
general?
that we do have to take to the board.
No, it wasn't on that table. There was no number on there that was in the magnitude of $2 million.
No. And American, as I said, it is in active construction. So we would not have identified it as having the opportunity to take those funds because we still have, work going on. So the ones that were identified, the projects have been, the term is called idle for some time, and the work has been completed. So that's why those were listed, and those funds will become available. And as this one closes out, and when we do go to the board, if there are funds still available in this, we will, we will go ahead and sweep those and put them in the appropriate place.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
The column D of the Measure E report is the projected deficit surplus. That's the tool we've been using to look at, potentially sweepable funds.
Mm-hmm.
And at least I use that as a trigger. If I see a projected surplus, if there really is a projected surplus, if we really do think that Americans' modernization is going to come in under the 25.7, that would be the place I would look.
Well, you have to
understand there, then I just assume that we're on track for a budget.
Right. So you have to understand too, like I said, when we finally do the final accounting of all of the projects, we also have to take into account, just because we don't see it as a expenditure, and if the contractor hasn't billed for it, we still have to account for it and, anticipate that will be drawn down. So that's why we're not reflecting that $2 million, because there may still be a $2 million, progress billings that are still outstanding that they haven't submitted, that we have to make sure we have the ability to pay.
So how do you decide when to put a number in that column then?
So the number that you see reflected is the total project cost that has been approved.
I meant the projected deficit surplus column.
Oh,
Because that's been a super useful tool, right? In the previous
we're talking
reports.
about, I'm sorry, we're talking about two different things. I apologize. So Connie, do you want to answer that? Because I don't want to misspeak.
Either Connie or Judith.
Yes.
You're talking about the surplus with the financial report.
Yes.
So when the contract is budgeted, when the contract's committed and then everything's been paid, so then there will be no surplus. Only when there's a surplus when there is contract that's like committed, but there are no invoices coming in that we're anticipating invoices to arrive in the future. So that's your surplus right there.
Connie,
So for the American Modernization Project, when do you think you would have a projected surplus or deficit for that project?
For the American mod?
Yeah.
Because right now it's all projected right now with the budgets already, all the contracts already committed. I can look into it and let you know later on, but for right now.
So Connie,
I guess the question is for Kelly. I guess the question is, Kelly, once you file the notice of completion for American or any other site, I mean, we're pretty much complete and you can release any funds at that point, I would think, right?
Right. But it's my understanding that I have to take the accounting report or I don't know what our what we call it, but the final accounting or surplusing I have to take to the board and have them approve us moving it from the project line to the program contingency line.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, whenever you do that, it would be after you filed notice of completion.
Correct.
So that would be the appropriate time to move any monies from the actual project to the contingency.
I'm not asking about moving the money. I'm asking about projecting where we think that project's gonna land. And it's been a very useful tool to be able to see in column D a projected deficit or surplus.
So I think I don't want to misspeak for you, Brian, but it sounds like the plainest question is why in that line item for American high school modernization is there not in column D that $2 million?
Because that $2 million hasn't been identified as being a surplus at this point. As I said, we may still have $2 million worth of outstanding invoices because we're in the process of doing the final accounting. So once the final accounting is completed and we've verified that all the bills are paid, then that's when whatever the delta is between what's been paid out and what's left over is then going to be reflected in that column.
So at what point do you use that column D?
Yeah, and that was my second question: was when do we think we would know that to update that column?
For American, we'll probably know that sometime by the end of November, early December, because the contractor is due to demobilize from the site and close everything up by the second week in November, and they have been instructed to close out their books and bill us basically for all the things that they're owed within 30 days of that date. So we will know for sure by the end of December and by the first part of January what our actual costs were and what our project closeout costs were for that item, for that project.
Thank you. I think that makes sense. It has to be very, very, very late in the project for you to safely project a surplus.
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on American? Okay. So the next one is Horner Middle School conversion, and that project right now is still under construction. The new buildings were completed. Excuse me. We currently have the locker rooms are being completed, as well as the play fields and the new track. And I believe that the construction of building D is in the process of being completed as well. Our tentative completion date for that is December 20th, and with a full turnover of all items for Horner sometime between January and February of next year. Excuse me. As I stated, the administrative building and the building A have been occupied by the teachers, and they are currently using it and basically preparing themselves for when they return to in-person classes. But there are many teachers who are using their classrooms for their virtual learning setup. And currently, right now, that project budget is at $98 million, $111,374. But I know that we have had several changes that have occurred due to kind of design challenges, as well as some site-based challenges. And so we're going to probably, let's see, want to make sure that I look at this correctly. We're going to probably come in about another $400,000 or $500,000 over that number when everything is all said and done. So we're in the process of negotiating those additional changes and identifying what those real costs would be for the things that need to be done. But we'll be a little bit over this budget when everything is finally finished in spring 2021. We're currently in DSA review for the locker room that was added this summer, and I will probably hear back from the design team sometime at the end of this month to know what the status is of that review, and if at all any changes or impacts that we'll have in adding that permanent portable to that site. The next item is the voice over IP and the Bell speakers and Bell and speaker upgrades. That is currently at 97% complete. And I believe that we've received notice of completion the beginning of this week for this particular project. And we have gone through and walked the sites with all of the principals, as well as our technical staff for facilities, and have gotten a sign off on that. So we're hoping to have everything buttoned up and pinned up, of course, by the end of the year as well on this particular project. So, and the last project that is, I shouldn't say the last, Thornton is on the list of under construction, and we have completed, well, not completed, we're in the process of doing the site and infrastructure activities, and we have currently expended to date $2,435,976 on that particular scope of work. And so we have gotten DSA approval on increments 2 and 3, and that scope of work is currently being prepared to go out to bid within the next 2 weeks. And on the second part of increment 3, we are currently having a third-party estimator review the numbers and prepare a rough order of magnitude estimate for us to gauge against what our anticipated expenses are going to be for that. And if we move on to our complete projects list, we have Walters, which is complete and occupied. The Groomer Friends project was completed this summer, and American High School new construction has been completed and has now been occupied. And the numbers that you see reflected there are the final accountings that have been realized on those projects. So with that, are there any questions before I stop sharing? Okay, there you go. All right. And that is the updated current facilities report. Can't hear you, Chip. Chip, you're on mute.
Marcus, are you still on the Zoom?
Yes.
Okay, good. So one of the things we talked about Monday was the initiation or re-implementation of bond program audits, internal bond program audits. When do you think those would start?
We are currently working on an RFQ that we need to develop our scope of work for the program audit. We're looking at a very comprehensive audit of the bond program. I think that information out of that audit will be very useful for this for the CBOC, and I think it'll also be very useful for the district. You guys are asking a lot of questions, and I know that just from my experience, I know that some things that we're probably not utilizing best practices in many respects, and I think that a lot of there are a lot of assumptions. I think Brian was asking about, when is the best time to, as an example, to recognize project funding as being released. That type of information would also come out of the audit report, because they will look at all aspects of our program, change orders, our processes, our internal processes, how decisions are made. They'll just go through the whole gamut of financial and program audits. So we are preparing an RFQ, and we are like our plan is to probably award by December and have that work done prior to the spring, and bring that report to the CBOC for you all to review.
Okay. That's actually a little different than I thought it was going to be. What I was thinking is that you were going to start implementing internal reviews of all the projects and the cost to complete relative to the budget, and determine, on a monthly or a quarterly basis, which projects are on track to finish on budget, which projects are a little bit in trouble and might have a budget increase, which projects are actually underrun and might have a budget decrease. And I thought the project managers and the project personnel that are out in the field on construction and doing the design internal to your team would be doing that. But you're thinking of something different than I was.
Might I answer that, Marcus? So Chip,
Yeah.
those processes that you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
those are things that we currently already do on a monthly
Okay.
basis. So so for us to re-implement, it would be repetitive, because that is something that is done on a regular basis already. And so,
But Chip, I do think one of the questions that the CBOC has asked is, like, could some of these costs been foreseen? For example, Thornton, could that have been foreseen? And that's something that the auditors can take a look at our processes to see if there was somewhere in the process that should have been foreseen. So those are the type of things that the auditors can do, and give us good information and feedback in that regard.
Okay. So will the bond program audits that you're out for RFP, will those be costs that will be part of the bond, or will those be Fremont Unified School costs that will be covered elsewhere?
No, those are definitely bond related costs.
Oh. Okay. All right.
This-
Well, I'll be
this-
interested to hear how much that's going to be.
Mhm.
And what value
From
we're
my
going to get.
experience, I mean,
What value we're going to get from that.
or you're going to get a lot of value from it. You're going to get a lot of value from it. And you know, and you're going to find out a lot of things about this program that you guys really, it'll be an eye opener for all of us, to be honest with you. And I think it'll definitely be worth the money. I don't anticipate it, because usually the way the costs work is depending on how far back we want them to audit, because they will look at change orders and look at our processes as far back as we want them to go. So right now we're looking at 2 years. So based on a 2-year look back, that I would imagine we would have a budget of about 50 or 60,000 to complete that. It shouldn't be any more than that, I would think.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea. I think if we are in the mindset of looking towards the future, if we are going to be asking for another bond, in order to say that, you know, we think that these are the mistakes maybe that were made in the past that maybe we could rectify, or that we, you know, or if we have an audit that says we tried all these different methods, and this is kind of the work that was put in to make sure that that money was spent, you know, as best as it could be spent. I mean, I think that there's definitely value in having somebody come in and see what were kind of the good and the bad from the previous monies that were spent.
I'll just give you guys an example. When I was at district in San Jose, when we first had a bond program audit done, I mean, it was pretty bad. I'll be honest with you. I had not been there that long, but we implemented all the recommendations, and there were at least 80 something recommendations, and we completed every one of those recommendations. So after, I would say, over a 3-year period, our program went from a very poor bond program to one of the better run programs in California. And but it was because we were getting that deep program audit and being able to look at all aspects of our operation and how we deliver projects. So I definitely think it's worth the investment.
Okay, good. All right. So to be mindful of people's schedules and time, it is 7:30, and I know sometimes we have a meeting right after this one that some of the people need to go to. I think we've spent a lot of good time on finance and on project status, and so that was good. That was good time spent. I don't think there's really too much left in the agenda. Does anybody else have anything that they want to go over or touch upon?
Were there board actions? Because I think we skipped that line item.
We have skipped that line item for now. Oh yeah, we should come back to it.
I mean, it's fine. Can we just have those emailed to us? Just just so we know what those board actions were that would have been discussed today.
Okay. I think Kelly normally presents that. Kelly, were there any?
There were just 2 board actions that I can recall, which were we approved the industrial hygienist for Kennedy High School, and we also had the approval of the amendment to the construction management contract for Roebelin Construction Management Services at Centerville, for them to move from the design development to the actual construction phase. So those were the 2 items.
Okay.
That were action items.
No, I know there was.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Anything else, anyone?
Hi, Chip. What is the implementation plan?
Person who I'm asking to identify yourselves.
I'm sorry. Who? Somebody repeat the question,
Steve.
please.
Hi, Chip. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Steve.
Yeah. I just want to know what can I see this Missouri implementation plan?
I'm sorry, which implementation plan?
Yeah, that's what I think there is a plan, right? Yeah, for the implementing the projects. I read in the I read in the notes. So there is one, and I just
Siv,
wonder if anybody else has seen it.
Siv, are you talking about the long range facility master plan? That
I
one?
think it's approved by the board December 10th. Carla, it's in the notes. It's in your notes, you know.
Yeah. Well,
And also,
the December plan was presented to us back in, I think, January. It was the finance report around January that updated all the budgets and all the projects, that we've been talking about in the past year.
Yes.
Now,
That's,
last month there was a big change to the budget at Thornton, and that basically wiped out the contingency that was created in the December plan. So we're kind of, that's what we've been talking about all this meeting.
okay. And also for the audit reports, I want to know who is doing the audit for the overruns, all these things we talked about just a few minutes back. I just want to know, and also they should give us a plan on how they're going to conduct the audit, before the money is approved to pay for them. That's my opinion, but it's up to the, I don't know who's. I heard that we're going to hire an outside auditor to figure out exactly how the cost overrun took place, right? All different projects, right? Like lessons learned. What we learn from going through this bond, So I want to know the plan. I want the plan they have, so everybody can look at the plan before they do the audit.
So what I'll do, because we are working on the scope of that audit, so I'll have Kelly, and we will bring that to your next meeting so that you all can see the scope of work that the auditors will undertake as part of.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Sure. I'm Steve. Okay, welcome. I'm done.
Okay. Anything else, anyone?
I move we adjourn then.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? We adjourn.
Aye.
Hey, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
Marcus,
you, everybody.
thanks for being here.
Have a good night.
Kelly and Connie, great reports tonight. Very informative. And Judith, thank you for being here, and the whole CBOC team.
Glad
Once
to
again,
be here.
thank you for taking time out of your evening to be with us.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye,
Kelly, thank you.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Chip, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. See you, Seth.